There's a bunch of stuff that happened. This video was the best one I found to just go over everything. So let's get started.
The U.S. and Israel escalating massively yesterday in the Iran war. We can put these images up on the screen. They struck Israel specifically, but apparently with the U.S.'s cooperation and assent, struck Iran's South Pars gas field. Drop site says this is the world's largest natural gas field. It is a core pillar.
We'll be looking at Asmongold's video about the situation later. There will be some ranting on my part, but that's for later.
Of Iran's energy supply. You can see some of the images of the smoke rising there on your screen. They go on to say the major escalation comes alongside reported impacts on other oil and petrochemical facilities.
So, of course, Israel's struck Iran's oil, the gas infrastructure in this case. And this was predictable. I mean, Trump is under a huge amount of pressure and to do something, and it's just, he's on course to just, lose the midterms because Strait of Hormuz remains closed. So, again, he probably expected this to he was hoping maybe this would combine with the assassinations, might put enough pressure on Iran to ask for a ceasefire. Of course, it didn't. They just retaliated. But let's go on.
According to multiple reports, IRGC-linked Tasnim News issued an urgent warning urging people to immediately leave major oil and gas sites in Saudi, the UAE, and Qatar, saying they had become direct and legitimate targets that could be struck within hours. And then they followed up on that threat, striking in particular in Qatar, in Saudi, and in Kuwait. Let's go ahead and put the Qatari.
Yeah, it's wild.
Images up on the screen here. This is Qatar Energy's Ras Laffan industrial city to the north of Doha. This is their main site for the production of LNG, which is gas to liquid, as well as the largest export terminal for LNG in the world. So that is a massive deal. Let's go ahead and put this next one up on the screen. This is the strike in Riyadh that you can see here. And according to Drop Site News, they say 4 injured in Riyadh after debris from an intercepted ballistic missile fell near a refinery.
I have a video. I'm going to go into why we got into this, a good video, and how Trump was manipulated into this. I'll get into that later. But remember, Israel is a proxy of the U.S. deep state, our proxy in the region. So it's sort of the U.S. deep state manipulating Israel, manipulating Trump. 2 layers is, I think, what's happening. And the Israel layer also has its own interests, which is, greater Israel, whatever. Yeah, so that's the whole situation.
Refinery in Saudi Arabia. 4 foreign Asian residents were injured, limited material damage. But so you have, strikes here in Riyadh, which is pretty extraordinary, inside of Saudi Arabia. You also had some strikes inside of Kuwait. And then this is the big one. Let's put this next tear sheet up on the screen from the AP. Saudi Arabia said a drone hit the country's Samraf refinery in the port city of Yanbu on the Red Sea. And there is a reason why I say this one is extremely significant. We've been following Rory Johnston, oil and gas analyst. Arnaud Bertrand has also been talking about how significant this is as well. If you can put this map up on the screen, you can see, so on one side, we have the Strait of Hormuz, which, of course, Iran has locked down. So that's one way to ship oil out of the region. On the other side, you have the Red Sea, where so far the Houthis have not engaged. And so Saudi has been shipping oil in this east-west pipeline to the Red Sea so that they can continue to export some proportion of the oil.
Limited by that pipeline, but it's still better than nothing.
There. And now that area, that port, and right where that pipeline is, that has been struck as well.
Yep.
Last thing, Sagar, before I get your reaction here, because Rory Johnston was tweeting about this. So he was warning this is a really big deal when the reports were unconfirmed. Now this Saudi Ministry of Defense, he says, now confirming that 1 ballistic missiles were launched at the port of Yanbu, which were intercepted. A drone has fallen on an oil refinery in Yanbu. Knew the lack of denial was weird. Not great that Iran is turning its attention to the Red Sea. So we don't have full information about the extent of the damage. But if you're looking at cutting off both of those pathways to export oil from the region, this is an earth-shattering move.
Right, exactly. For everybody who took a look at the map, the Red Sea, where Saudi Arabia, the East-West pipeline, is able, with that pipeline, to get about 70 to 80% of the oil that previously would go through the Straits of Hormuz. So 70 to 80%, by the way, is still a catastrophe.
70% of Saudi's oil, not the whole region's oil.
For global oil supply, but 70 to 80 is a lot better than zero. So the striking of that refinery is a message. Not only are we going to be able to try and target the pipeline, the refineries, and some of the loading to be able to get all of that out. Now, don't forget, this was an Iranian state action. This was not yet the Houthis, who also have the ability with Yemen to be able to try and close and choke off the Red Sea, which is what would be a genuine catastrophe for oil.
That will happen if things continue to escalate.
Returning to LNG, Ras Laffan is 20% of global LNG. What's even more important about Ras Laffan is actually the amount of LNG and gas that it provides to Europe and to Asia. Already, European markets are panicking as of this morning, 25% increase in natural gas. I saw British analysts who are predicting genuine...
I mean, everyone knew that if U.S.-Israel bombs Iran's natural gas, then it'll turn around and bomb Qatar's natural gas. It's just normal.
Catastrophe for their economy. 2,500 pounds they're looking at in terms of their heating bills next winter if things continue to go on the track that they are. And remember, they're not a rich country, right? Their GDP per capita is like $33,000. So that would be a disaster for the average British household. Pakistan gets the vast majority of its LNG from Qatar. You are going to see rolling blackouts in that country if you continue to see this. The Ras Laffan facility has had, quote, extensive damage, according to the Qatari authorities. Remember, I used to live in Doha. I drove past...
I think it's 27% permanently offline, at least for the next 3 to 5 years.
Ras Laffan does. It's shocking to see the images like this because I know not only the amount of Americans, the amount of investment that went into that. I mean, we're talking about tens of billions. I think the current price tag on Ras Laffan was 70 billion, and it went up like this in flames. Not to mention that they had an evacuation. Qatar has declared force majeure on a ton of its contracts out until April. Taiwan is the #3 recipient of Qatari LNG. Qatar also, let's not forget that Ras Laffan and the facilities around it produce about 30% of global helium supply, critical to chips manufacturing. The Taiwanese economy, this is earth-shattering. I mean, for all
I saw China put on a statement say, hey, your energy problems will be over if we just have a peaceful reunification.
Exactly. China's loving this. Oh, God.
I also would be remiss if I didn't just talk about the climate, situation here. What do you think the entire... all of Asia is doing right now? Burning coal. They're saying, okay, well, you got to have electricity. So what are you going to do? They are going to burn more coal as a result of this energy.
I'm just curious, coal prices. Yep, coal prices shooting up. 26 from 50%. Coal prices up 50%.
Crisis than probably at any time in the last 20 years. That's what they're currently turning towards. And even with that, we are predicting a massive spike. So here in the United States, we're largely insulated from this for now. We have produced a ton of our own LNG. This is part of the reason for those who are wondering why there is a discrepancy between Brent oil prices and West Texas oil prices. So West Texas oil is not yet at 100 a barrel. Brent is currently trading around like $115 per barrel. I've had to learn a little bit about the differences, but I don't think we can adequately explain the consequences of taking this Qatari facility and the Red Sea action together to show that...
Yeah, different oils are trading at different prices. With the OPEC basket, that's really shot up to 135 and Bourbon Q 124. Yep.
Genuine oil energy catastrophe is here. It's here. Now it's only a question of, can we roll any of this back? And considering the initial reaction of the president of the United States and the Israeli...
Even if it's rolled back. Now, remember, 27% of Qatar's natural gas is offline for 3 to 5 years. It's gone. Even if everything is resolved today and there's peace, ceasefire, whatever, 25% of Qatar's natural gas is not going to be around for a while.
The authorities I am not optimistic, to say the least.
Well, and that
Me neither.
Iran
Nope.
matches their energy,
Yep.
you know, and they're like, okay, you want to escalate? Game on. This is our whole goal, is to make you suffer and bet that we can withstand more pain than you can. I just want to read Arnaud's analysis here just to underscore the severity of what we are waking up to this morning. He said yesterday, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if infrastructure like this, and he's talking about the Qatari facility specifically, gets blown up, as of this moment, it will take at least a decade to recover from this war. Already, he's saying, with what's already been done, it will take a decade to recover. And the truth is, the world's energy picture is probably changed forever. This single facility produced roughly 20% of global LNG supply, and as of 2011 had taken $70 billion to build. What makes this even worse is that Iran's strike on this was retaliation after Israel attacked their South Pars gas field, which draws from the same natural gas reservoir.
So it's not just, you have gas infrastructure in Qatar and Iran getting damaged permanently offline now.
Which is the world's largest reservoir by far. It's about the size of Qatar itself. Heck, on the list of the 25 largest natural gas fields, this single reservoir holds roughly 40% of their combined recoverable reserves. It is nearly 6 times bigger than the second biggest field in the world. Unlike many of the others on the list, it's only at 10% depletion, meaning 90% of the gas is still there, which means that probably for many years, a huge share of the gas from the world's largest reservoir simply will not be extractable, as infrastructure on both sides, Qatar's and Iran's, has now been blown up. From a global energy supply perspective, we are deep into worst case scenario. So that is from Arnaud. To your point
scenario
about the president and the Israelis. So immediately we get the Axios
Congratulations, Trump. You fucked yourself even more.
reports. Let's put this up on the screen because, you know, the question is, was Trump down with this, right? Was this just...
Oh, yes, he was down with this. He tried to be cute about this. He let Israel attack Iran's natural gas facility. Then he puts out this Truth Social post saying, we had no idea that Israel was going to do that, and they won't do that again. And if you Iran, don't strike back, there will be no further attacks in gas facilities. But if you do strike back, we'll level everything. So it was basically like a kindergarten things. We hit you, but you're not allowed to hit us back type deal. That's what he tried to pull. Trump trying to be cute. Of course, Iran didn't buy that, and they just struck back and hit Qatar.
The Israelis freelancing? Was this Trump's idea? Was this Israel's idea? Did they work in concert? I mean, you always have to assume they're working in concert, hand in glove. But in any case, that was what was given to Axios here. Israel strikes Iran natural gas facility in coordination with the U.S.
Oh, I haven't been looking at food prices. That food is fertilizer is this harvest, and so the earliest it would show its effects are next fall. It's after the midterms consideration, the food prices. So yeah, they might boost up a little bit ahead of time, but I don't expect anything major beyond that. Again, for reason the U.S. financial system can't have drastic swings of prices that aren't predicted, so they'll be held down.
The Israelis said basically, yeah, we executed, but we're sending an American message, that was their language, that you have to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or else we are going to continue to decimate your domestic.
And Iran's message back is, if you attack our oil infrastructure, we'll destroy all the oil infrastructure in the Gulf, and Strait of Hormuz won't matter anymore.
Energy supply. So they said explicitly, the Israeli officials who spoke to Barak Ravid, that the strike was coordinated with and approved by the Trump administration.
Which I believe, yes. At this point of the war, Israel can't afford for Trump to back out, and attacking Iran's oil infrastructure without Trump's support, that risks Trump having an excuse to turn against Israel. It would give Trump an excuse to turn against Israel, and they can't afford that at this point in time. He's not in deep enough yet.
And a U.S. defense official confirmed that as well. So then let's put A to B up on the screen here. So now you have this wild post from Donald.
Yeah, this is Trump trying to be cute. Like Israel, yeah, here we go.
Trump. which seems to be a reaction to the fact of him realizing, like, oh shit, this thing is escalating out of control and the impact on the economy is going to be devastating. So he says Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East, has violently lashed out at a major facility known as South Pars gas field in
other words, Trump, because he's in this quagmire, he doesn't know how to get out. His idea was, okay, we need to put pressure on them. So we need to attack their gas infrastructure. That'll put pressure, that'll hurt them a lot. But we don't want them to hit our gas infrastructure. So Israel, you'll attack the gas infrastructure, and I'll put out this post saying that I had no idea, and you'll see.
So here he's shifting the blame to Israel that they lashed out. He says a relatively small section of the whole has been hit.
Yeah, you see, look, the country of Qatar was in no way, shape, or form involved with it. Like, obviously, the obvious target after we hit their gas infrastructure is for them to attack Qatar's gas infrastructure. That is U.S. military bases in the region. You see, this is Qatar. This is the biggest U.S. base in the Middle East, right there, in Qatar. Qatar is 100% involved in this war on the U.S.'s side and is a completely legitimate target. Of course they're going to attack that. But his idea was he wanted to put pressure on Iran, but he didn't want to feel any pain. He says no more attacks will be made by Israel pertaining to this extremely valuable South field unless
the U.S. knew nothing about this particular attack, and the country of Qatar was in no way, shape, or form involved with it, nor did it have any idea that it was going to happen. He's talking about Qatar because Qatar was the first to get hit in response. Unfortunately, Iran did not know this or any of the pertinent facts pertaining to the South Pars attack, and unjustifiably and unfairly attacked a portion of Qatar's LNG gas facility. In all caps, no more attacks will be made by Israel pertaining to this extremely important and valuable South Pars field unless Iran unwisely decides to attack a very innocent, in this case, Qatar, in which instance the United States of America, with or without the help or consent of Israel, will massively blow up the entirety of the South Pars gas field at an amount of strength and power that Iran has never seen.
Yeah. Basically, he's trying to pretend that he didn't okay this strike.
For your attention to this matter, Sagar, your thoughts on that?
This is the closest evidence that we have right now of a person who is genuinely spiraling. This is an actual crime.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because the current, I mean, look, somebody's lying, right? So the U.S. officials who talked to Axios, the Wall Street Journal, and the Pentagon and everybody else said that they not only knew of the strike, they basically asked Israel to do it, were okay with it if they had advanced knowledge, which according to them they did. It's pretty obvious why this happened, because the world freaked out as a result. The Qataris were putting out statements obviously at the beginning. This is the thing about Qatar. They expelled those Iranian diplomats. Do you know who the first person they blamed was? Israel. They were like, Israel has unleashed this. They have struck the South Pars gas field. We know that we're going to get struck as a result of this. And now they have brought hell upon the region, descending it all into chaos, destroying our economy, destroying Iranian infrastructure, and showing the...
And the U.S. okayed this attack on Iran's gas facilities. So that's by proxy. They are okaying an attack on Qatar's oil gas infrastructure too, because U.S. can't defend Qatar. It's shown that quite clearly. So,
or basically leading us farther up the escalation spiral. It's very obvious, and this is what I've talked about with magical thinking. The way that presidents like this, who are in a bunker mentality, where they are very susceptible to magical thinking of miracle strikes. LBJ, this is the classic LBJ model for anybody who's ever read any history. Sir, if we just take out this Viet Cong facility, if we just take out this North Vietnamese corridor where the weapons go, then the entire war will end. He goes, okay, let's do it. Rolling thunder, right? We're going to go and we're going to do this massive operation, and that is going to break the back of the North Vietnamese.
Yes, so they're telling Trump, oh, you just do this and it'll be over. Just do this, it'll be over. And this is escalation each time. And this doesn't work every time.
Of the Viet Cong, and then they'll finally surrender. And what ends up always happening is that it deepens the existentialism on the other side. They always find a way around it. And then what happens? We're deeper into the war. That's exactly what happened with this strike.
At least in that instance, it was our own military and intelligence that was pushing. I mean, according to not just Joe Kent, we'll get to that later in the show, but Marco Rubio and others. I mean, It is the Israelis who are pushing this direction. I mean, think about how stupid, how absolutely
Yeah, Israel has been trying to get us into this war for decades.
insanely stupid this action by the Israelis. I mean, from a U.S. perspective, from their perspective, it's great. You know, they want the chaos. They're down for all of it. But from our perspective and from a global perspective, like the developing countries around the world, they're going to be the ones who are already suffering the most. It's completely insane. Iran's whole thing is to make us pay economically. The economic warfare is the whole point. They're not shy about that. They explain it quite clearly. We need you to feel pain. We need you to understand that we have a chokehold on the global economy. We have a chokehold.
They want us to understand that we can't just go in and bomb their supreme leader and expect no consequences. All this economic pain is the consequences of just going in and assassinating Iranian leaders.
On these Gulf Arab states, we can destroy their economy. We probably already have destroyed their countries in large part because nobody's going to be going back to Dubai and thinking the same of it after all that has happened.
Unfortunately,
so you play right into their hands. Yes, it's going to hurt them that this, that the South Pars field was damaged. That is going to hurt Iran, no doubt about it. Who do you think is willing to take more pain? The country that is in an existential battle for its life.
The starvation will be next year, once the impact of the fertilizer shortage gets felt.
Or Americans who don't even want this war to begin with. Who do you think is going to be able to accept more pain? So you have.
On that note, I didn't know this, but China has a strategic fertilizer reserve. Did you know that? That not only a strategic oil reserve, they had a strategic fertilizer reserve. So they're going to be insulated from this. And by the way, we in the United States do not have a strategic fertilizer reserve.
Have given them the green light. Who can really justifiably complain about Iran striking this oil infrastructure now throughout the region? Yeah. Of course, Western countries will do so, completely ignoring who started this war, completely ignoring who ignited this round of escalation. But everybody who is looking at this knows that it is completely reasonable response, and it was telegraphed in advance.
Well, it's not only good for them, it's good for everyone, because it means there is fertilizer supplies coming onto the market that can, in very small part, make up for what's not being shipped out of the Gulf. Because China will need to import less fertilizer if it starts using its domestic supply. So they are helping out the entire world by tapping their strategic fertilizer supply.
It was utterly, utterly predictable. You knew that when you took this step up the escalation ladder, how they would respond. And so now, you have markets that are falling, you have the oil price continuing to go up, and you have really opened Pandora's box here. We have more reporting about, what Trump thought about this in advance, blah, blah, blah. You can put A3 up on the screen. The Wall Street Journal has a similar report from Barack Ravid saying he wants no more strikes on Iranian energy sites after Israel's Wednesday attack. But Trump...
Well, this is good. And by the way, you want to know why Iran had to strike back and had to strike Qatar's LNG production? Because of this. Because if it didn't, if Iran didn't strike back, you know what would have happened? Tomorrow, Trump would have bombed more Iranian oil infrastructure. He would have just kept on bombing all the infrastructure in Iran until they submitted by trying to, create such humanitarian and conditions and pain that they're forced to relent. So they had to go attack Qatar and maintain deterrence. And it had the intended effect that Trump does not want more energy strikes.
Did know about the Israeli strike on South Pars in advance, supported it as a message to Tehran over its block of the Strait of Hormuz. President believes Iran got the message, laughable, and is now against attacks on Iranian energy infrastructure. But Trump could once again be open to targeting more Iranian energy facilities, depending on Tehran's future actions in the strategic waterway. So, so he is scrambling, is concerned about putting boots on the ground, but also has this conundrum of the Straits of Hormuz, which are not going to be reopened without a major fight it's going to take more than, sending a message through another bombing campaign for that to go in your direction. Someone convinced him, oh, well, this will send him a message. Then they'll really buckle. Then they're going to be able to negotiate with you. Then Steve Witkoff will have his text messages answered or whatever. And so they go forward with this. And of course, it only leads to more escalation. You can put A6 up on the screen because this speaks to, how he's thinking about this conflict right now. Apparently,
Trump hasn't made up his mind on sending Americans into Iran to seize nuclear materials, sources say. Yes, he had no plan. His idea was this is going to be over in one weekend. So now he's just trying. He's trying to, remember how they were going to arm the Kurds? Well, that fell off. It's just throwing darts at a wall. And he needs something that can be seen as a success. Because if he could secure Iran's nuclear material, then he could go for a ceasefire and give in other directions. Maybe he would have at least a victory. He's completely wrecking the global economy, but at least I got the Iran's nuclear material, that type of thing. Right now, Iran is probably racing to the bomb, and they have a more hardline new supreme leader. Iran is still throwing missiles all over the place. I mean, he hasn't accomplished anything at all so far, except he's gradually wrecking the global economy. So he's looking for a win, for any type of win that could help him politically deal with all the fallout that this is going to have.
There's a consideration of sending Americans into.
So this securing nuclear material would be a win that would really help him. But it's not going to be an easy thing to do because this is deep inside Tehran, and there are places in Tehran where we don't have air superiority, where they still have air defenses on the eastern side. And it's a mountainous, heavily fortified stronghold of a country. I don't think this is viable.
To seize nuclear material, something we had talked about before, hasn't made up his mind on that yet. Whether he wants to send American forces into Iran to seize that nuclear material. We can also, look to, there is a report that there are more Marines, some 5,000 more Marines that are being sent to the region.
That's another thing, that it takes time to assemble manpower for any type of military operation, boots on the ground. And that's a huge failure on Trump's part, is if you're going to do this, and it's not going to be over in one weekend, and you're going to need boots on the ground, you need to prepare that 6 months ahead of time. You need that 6 to 9 months ahead of time for any type of huge, big, ground operation. And if you're just starting now, by the time that's ready, that's going to be 4 or 5 months from now. All he can do right now is probably 30,000 Marines is basically what he has to work with on a very short basis. I'm guessing I'm pulling that number out of the hat based on 5,000 Marines from there, 5,000 Marines from here. But that's basically all he has. Those are the easily mobilizable troops that he can send into the region. And what are you going to do against a country of 90 million, 4 times the size of Iraq, sorry. Yeah.
As well, they're evaluating options about, Kharg Island. Could we seize that? What could we do to be able to reopen the Strait of Hormuz? The UK isn't sending any ships, but they are sending some military advisors to help game out what could possibly.
Yeah, you need to have a plan to keep the Strait of Hormuz open if you're going to bomb Iran's supreme leader. And Trump not having a plan for that, it makes this entire war a failure, no matter what happens. That bombing supreme leader, no plan for Strait of Hormuz, that's just strategically idiotic.
Possibly be done here. None of these are easy answers, Sagar, whatsoever. None of these things would be easy to accomplish, and all of them would lead to American service members being put at grave, grave risk and in massive numbers.
A good friend of mine asked me yesterday, he said, what's the best case scenario? And I said, the best case scenario is that we leave today, which would mean several things.
That's the problem. It's not possible. We bombed the supreme leader. They closed the Strait of Hormuz. we leave today. Well, yeah, we could pack up all U.S. bases and move in the region, move them out, but that doesn't make Tehran open the Strait of Hormuz. We need to change the Iranians' mindset to convince them to open the Strait of Hormuz, and that's not something Trump has control over. We're fucked. We're stuck. There is no end this right now today, because there's no way to convince Iran to do that.
Number one, the Iranian regime remains totally intact with a bloodlust and a desire to become North Korea yesterday. As in, we will never make a deal with the United States. We don't care about economic sanctions. If our population must be immiserated, starved, and famine, so...
To be fair, with Russia and China's help, it would probably take reparations. We could probably maybe convince Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz. But if we gave up completely on the nuclear part, and we said we just wanted the Strait of Hormuz, and we approached Russia and China, it would be seen as a complete loss for Trump and devastating for him politically, which is why he'll never do it. But theoretically, it might be possible to open the Strait of Hormuz if it would take a big dollar payment on us part. It would take actual reparations from the U.S. to Iran, but which will never happen. But it's theoretically possible.
Will be it. We will destroy or we will have the capacity to establish a credible deterrent to hit the continental United States. And that is all in. That's all we can possibly do to guarantee their security. And there is no point in negotiating with these people. That's the best case scenario.
Yeah.
Because they would maybe temporarily stop, and in the interim, some oil would flow. Qatar.
But what do you do to Mister? How do you convince the Iranians to open the strait? How do you convince Trump to pay reparations to Iran?
LNG, Raslafan, God only knows how much
impossible.
It's going to take to rebuild that facility, to get the months of oil and LNG and helium and fertilizer, the backlog that's already been created.
Yeah, 2026 does feel ridiculously long so far. It's moving slowly. And we still have a lot to go.
Back to normal, but we could survive it. We could all survive it. We're a very rich country. We'll be able to, to support it. The third world, everybody's going to suffer as a result. And of course, there's all the missile stockpiles, interceptors, etc. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario, we're not even close there. But you can see it, and we're all starting to see it. Qatar LNG, closure of the Red Sea.
The worst case scenario is, okay, I'll just say it right here, is Israel gets desperate, tries to nuke Iran. Iran responds by destroying all oil infrastructure in the Gulf. So we have a completely destroyed Persian Gulf with radiation poisoning just floating around for everyone, and gas prices for 200 for the foreseeable future. That is probably close to the worst case scenario. Oh, yes, you could escalate that a little bit further by saying maybe Russia and China gets drawn in and we have thermonuclear war and everyone dies. But both are terrible.
Oil at $200 to $300 a barrel abroad. Export ban here in the United States. Lines for even and odd numbers like the boomers had to live through during the OPEC crisis. That's really what
they used to have in places in Europe where you could fill up the tank of gas if your license plates had an odd number on one day, and then they only filled up the tanks of gas at even number the next day. So that's one way they did rationing in Europe during back then.
But it's going to look like $8 a gallon, $8 a gallon, $10 a gallon in California. No missile interceptors, boots on the ground, boys coming back home in coffins. And by the way, the problem is that the more of a crisis point that we reach for the U.S. economy, that means the more of an extreme that the president and his team will reach for.
Yeah.
Because
the
amount of courage it would take at this point, courage, cowardice, you could call it whatever you want, but I think courage to say, we're done.
It's courage isn't the right word. It's just Trump is politically finished if he backs down the way this guy's suggesting. If he says, okay, we won't talk about, you can keep your nuclear material and we'll pay war reparations to Iran and we'll admit defeat. Yeah, he's finished if he does that. So it's not courage. It might be courage to throw away your political career to de-escalate a war, but he won't do that.
Done here. We're done. And yes, Trump made this of his own making, but I promise you, if he finally ends this, I will give him one of those. Thank you. You know, I'll go on Fox News and say this is the most courageous decision, and it would be true.
That.
Yeah, I'll do it.
I'll let you handle
I wouldn't really mean most of it, but like I would say it to fluff his own ego and to provide the support and all of that that they would need. But that is what it would take. And we're going to talk about Joe Kent.
It would be the end of his presidency if he did.
It's going to be the end of his presidency in any case.
That. And it is also the end of his presidency if he continues.
Exactly.
Yes, that is it. If he backs down, end of his presidency. If he escalates, end of his presidency. And if he does nothing and just stalls, slowly, the end of his presidency. Every way. So let's move on to some other stuff I have. This is from Alexei Mercouris. He had
courageous decision.
Oh, no, this isn't it. I just guess I didn't copy it right. Wait. There we go.
And established the reserve currency status of the dollar was Saudi Arabia's agreement, not just on its own behalf, but as the main OPEC producer on behalf of OPEC to receive exclusively payments in US dollars.
He's talking about the petrodollar and how now that is at risk.
For oil, which, as I've discussed in many programs, immediately meant that every country around the world which had to import oil was obliged to hold dollars, oil being the world's most important and widely traded commodity, and the fact that everybody therefore needed to have dollars in order to buy oil.
Oh, I forget. With him, you have to speed it up.
That played a central role in stabilizing the reserve currency status of the dollar and creating the dollar system that emerged out of the collapse of the Bretton Woods system in the 1970s. So potentially the events that we're seeing take place, as I said, are colossal. And that isn't even looking at the geopolitical consequences of all.
It's the end of the dollar hegemony. And, oh my God, when that collapses, U.S. financial system will go with it. And I don't think anybody understands how bad that will be.
All of this, which I will probably have to discuss in a different program. No wonder we are now finally seeing, both in energy markets and in financial markets, growing anxiety, which is reflected in the falls in the financial markets and in the rises in energy prices that have taken place over the last 24 hours. So why did we get here? Given that all of that I've just described was entirely plausible, there was a real possibility that some of this would eventually happen.
Everyone knew it would happen, like I in my videos before the crisis knew it would happen.
Why has it happened? Well, I'm going to suggest that the reason it is...
I will have another video on how Trump was led into this after we're done with him.
What's happened is not actually that difficult to understand. When Israel and the United States launched this war against Iran on the 28th of February, they believed that the Iranian government was weak, brittle,
exactly,
that the political structures in Iran were unpopular and discredited.
And they were gambling all in on that version of events, that it would only last one weekend. They all in on that. They no planning whatsoever if that failed to come failed to materialize.
And delegitimized, not just by the suppression of the January protests, but by the many economic difficulties and other difficulties that Iran has faced over the last 10, 20 years. And the assumption seems to have...
Like, you used to be able to know how much US dollars there were at any given point in time, but no longer. Is that correct? No, I think that the Federal Reserve still publishes the amount of dollars in circulation. At least it was that way back in around 2011. It's the amount of U.S. dollars that exist in the world that was published. I can check on that another day, but if it's still the case. But at the very least, we knew how many there were back in 2011.
Been that following the death of the supreme leader and of his close.
Is this some video of some destruction? Oh, I'm going to get into that afterwards. Yes, Netanyahu gave a press conference, but what does that look like to you all? Just look at that carefully. Spawning in. Shirt sleeve spawns in. Blurry as hell news conference where
I'm alive, and you're all witnesses. And now that I dispatched this piece of fake news, I want to give you an update on Operation Roaring
wait
Lion.
for it.
Under President
Right now, he's putting, look, no sleeve.
Trump's visionary
And
leadership,
there, it spawns in. I'm hiding it a little bit. But, look. Whee! Magically spawning in shirt. So, yeah, Netanyahu is still dead. That's why the title of the stream.
Ring of officials, there would be a power vacuum in Iran, that the country would become destabilized, and that regime change would follow, and that it would follow very fast. As my colleague and friend Alex Christoforou repeatedly points out, the President of the United States has described the military campaign that the United States and Israel launched against Iran as a little excursion, which probably reflects closely what the President assumed it would be. In fact, I remember before the conflict began, when there were reports that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, was nervous and was advising the President that it might not be easy to achieve some of the objectives, such as regime change, through attacking Iran, that the President expected. I remember that the President responded by publishing a Truth Social post in which he said that General Kane was fully on board, was a full member of the team, and that in the event that there would be an attack on Iran, the military campaign would be easy. Well,
and yet he's assembling boots on the ground now, after the war starts, instead of preparing for it before.
It has turned out entirely otherwise. We're now well into the third week of the war.
3 weeks.
The conflict goes on.
And that means United States, not only interceptors, offensive weaponry, because we have been dropping not gravity bombs. We've been dropping smart bombs that planes can shoot from like hundreds of miles away, and they're basically missiles, and then from the air that go down into the ground. And we're running out of those. We're low on those. So there'll be a dramatic slowdown on the amount of U.S. bombings of Iran at this rate, because we're running out of ammunitions. That's why they brought in B-2 bombers to try to switch to gravity weapons, except we don't have air superiority over the eastern half of Iran. And we might see some more downed planes. Any way we can gauge if production is ramping up of any type of really high-tech military equipment requires rare earths, and that is being limited by China. But in terms of gravity bombs, those we have an unlimited amount of. That we won't run out of those. So we will always have something to bomb Iran with, but it'll be more risky and more costly, and we might lose bombers while doing it.
Endless predictions that Iran was running out of missiles and drones have so far proved untrue. Indeed, I believe that over the last 24 hours, as you might expect,
By the way, I found something cool on that. Give me 1 second. A PDF, just to give you an idea. Bring it over here. U.S. drone threat. This is all the different types of ranges of Iranian ballistic and cruise missiles. So, and here, let's make it a little bit bigger. Here you can see all the different types of missiles they have. And all their ranges. Then you have, described down here. They have a lot. They've produced a ton of different missiles. Different payloads. And they've been going mostly using stuff from back in 2013 so far in the war. They haven't used that much of it, their good stuff. So, and I think they're keeping, in case we decide, for example, to escalate and destroy their oil infrastructure, they want to be sure to have something to be able to hit back on us for that. So, it's that was a fun little PDF that I found.
the rate of launches of Iranian missile and drones has actually increased. And I notice that we are not hearing any more reports about the extraordinary success that Israel and the United States had supposedly achieved in destroying Iranian missile launch.
Do you remember that? The stories that we knocked out so many of their launchers? Do you remember that? Then yesterday, a huge missile barrage. And today, destroying Qatar's LNG production facilities.
Somehow, in some way, that whole narrative appears to have faded, at least for the moment. And, well, the appearance of the Iranian speedboats, the attacks on the tankers in the Gulf, in the Strait of Hormuz, in the Persian Gulf.
That also happened. I didn't mention it, but they brought more speedboats out, Iran, and then they used them to attack tankers.
What they also show is that part of Iran's navy, be it its conventional navy or the part of the navy that is controlled by the IRGC, contrary to the many claims, still remains functional, at least to some degree, and is able to continue operations. So, faced with this, faced also with the fact that Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz, has created this enormous disruption in global energy markets, that options to force the reopening, faced, in other words, by...
Sorry, let's move on to this section.
With the Iranians.
This is just about Europeans being stupid.
There's no word of any European officials talking to the Israelis. Europe, as is so often the case, gives the impression of a rabbit caught in the headlights of an oncoming car.
That is the best way to describe Europe right now. They've lost Russian cheap energy from Russia, and now they're losing cheap energy from Middle East, and they are fucked. They are just so fucked, and they know it, and there's nothing they can do, and they're just frozen.
This has been the most serious, and even more serious, abdication of responsibility by the European political class to the nations of Europe than what we have seen in Ukraine. As a European, I have a heavy heart in saying this, but however bad the quality of leadership in Europe seems to be, they always contrive to prove that the reality is even worse.
Agreed.
Anyway, that is all I'm going to say.
Yep. Europe is fucked. Okay, now let's look into why we got into the war. And I think this video here, I think is some really good points on how we got dragged into this idiotic war.
He spoke actually at the Sands Casino in 2014 2015, I believe it was, when he first started to emerge as a candidate. This is the casino owned by Sheldon Adelson
He's talking about Trump here.
in Las Vegas for the Republican Jewish Coalition, which is a cipher for all the money from the right-wing Likudnik billionaires in the U.S., principally Adelson money. And Trump said, you know, you guys like to make deals. Most of you are in real estate. He's probably thinking about his buddy Steve Witkoff. So let's make a deal with the Palestinians. What would be wrong with that? And what Trump said there was just so
Yes. Israelis did not like that.
unacceptable that he was denounced as an anti-Semite by the RJC. Then he immediately started to change his tune. And what did he say? What were the magic words? We're getting ripped off by the Iran deal that Barack Obama signed, and we're giving the Iranians and the mullahs hundreds of billions of dollars. This was, of course, a humongous lie. We were just unfreezing money that had been stolen, essentially held up in international banks through sanctions. And Trump hammered this message again and again. And it was like
So he fucked up and pissed off the Israeli lobby. And that's why he started railing against Iran and tore up the Iran deal. So that's how that happened, which I hadn't followed the events to what led to the ripping up of the Iran deal. So that was interesting.
Likudnik bat signal to Adelson and all the billionaires of the mega group that they could now support him. And suddenly he began to surge forward. He was making deals behind the scenes through his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who understood this world very well through his own family. Charles Kushner, the Kushner Foundation, was supporting some of the most radical settlements in the West Bank, supporting exclusively right-wing Likudnik-oriented activities. The Kushner family was close friends with Netanyahu when he was opposition leader in Likud. Netanyahu would come over to their house, and young Jared would have to get out of his bed and sleep on the couch so Netanyahu could have a guest room. I could go into the Kushner family for the next hour, but he was the fixer who helped align Donald Trump with this Zionist billionaire class. Donald Trump enters office. Israel
First term, everything he did on behalf of Israel, it didn't really matter. It didn't drag us into an energy crisis, didn't wreck the world. But this time
starts pushing Trump to, first of all, he rips up the Iran deal. So that was a major win. He announces the Abraham Accords, which is intended to encircle Iran with a Sunni alliance of family dictatorships in the Gulf. Seated in the front row, the Adelsons and Jared Kushner. It was all pretty clear what the agenda was. But Israel was making moves on the ground, too, to escalate so that Trump would be pushed to wage war. Gareth Porter...
Ripping up the nuclear deal is what set the stage for this war. Because there's no way for Trump to get a better deal than the nuclear deal, and so the only other alternative is war. If he had signed something with the Iranians, a new nuclear deal, everyone would have attacked him. It would have been politically devastating.
Published a really important analysis with us at the Gray Zone, a two-parter on how Netanyahu and Mike Pompeo, Christian Zionist, subject of influence for not just the Israel lobby, but also the MEK, exiled Iranian regime change group, when he was CIA director. Pompeo and Netanyahu basically teamed up to pressure Trump to authorize retaliatory attacks because of supposed axis of resistance attacks on U.S. bases inside Iraq. There was one key attack on a U.S. base in, I believe it was Baghdad. It might have been Baghdad or Erbil in 2019. And it
basically was ISIS, which we know Israel funded.
Turned out that no group affiliated with Iran or the Popular Mobilization Units had carried out that attack. It was, in fact, an ISIS attack. ISIS, a group that had essentially been defeated. Anyone could claim ISIS. Raises questions about whether it was a false flag. And it was with that attack, Netanyahu and Pompeo both went to Trump and said, you need to retaliate. And the way to do it is we're going to take out Qasem Soleimani, the number 2.
And what's not in this video is that his number 2 was apparently a Mossad agent. And he's the one who eventually became number 1 when this guy died. And that then helped do the pager attack against Hezbollah. He helped kill the supreme leader of Iran. And on that same day, he was arrested and executed as a spy. So that's reason why Israel wanted to take this guy out, is that so his second in command, which was one of their agents, could become the head of covert operations in Iran.
Figure in the IRGC's leading figure, head of the Quds Force, responsible for all of this terrorism against Americans, they claimed, even though he had just worked with the U.S. hand in glove to defeat ISIS. And we know that he's coming to Baghdad and will be getting off a plane to commit acts of terror against Americans, when in fact he was going to to negotiate diplomatically with Saudi Arabia. Trump authorizes a drone strike to kill Soleimani getting off the plane. And it's the first time that Iran retaliates against the U.S. with ballistic missiles. They attack the U.S. Al-Assad air base in Iraq. They, of course, give advance warning. Iran was always careful to avoid escalating beyond a certain point.
And he makes a great point, is when Trump did this assassination, this is actually key into how they got him into the war, is because they were then able to tell, well, Iran now wants to kill you because you killed their head of covert operations. And Iran is now trying to assassinate you, Mr. Trump.
However, the Israelis have scored this.
And then with the Butler assassination attempt, which had nothing to do with Iran, Iran was just who that was going to get blamed for it. They wanted,
achieved a major objective, not just militarily, but psychologically, because they had set Donald Trump up in an escalation trap where he would not only have to continue escalating against Iran every time it retaliated or face looking weak, which is another aspect of Trump's character, his personality. He always needs to save face and avoid looking weak. But also, Trump would now fear his own assassination because he had just taken out the second most important figure in the Iranian leadership hierarchy. And that helps us set the stage for Trump's comeback, his comeback campaign, and the various assassination attempts he faced after enduring.
Yeah, they used him okaying this assassination to convince him that Iran was after his life.
The whole Russiagate saga, which was indeed a hoax that was intended to paint Donald Trump as a traitor. The former CIA director, John Brennan, someone who has been involved in assassinations all over the world, oversaw the drone assassination program, calls Trump a traitor on national TV. Trump's looking over that shoulder for John Brennan. The Democrats impeached Trump in Congress over the Ukraine war. He faces lawsuits, accusations from women that he sexually harassed them in the past. It's all coming at Donald Trump so fast, and he develops this fear of assassination and also this determination to claw his way back to power, to get revenge against all the people who sought to take him out. And so for the Israelis, now the psychology of Donald Trump is clear. We just need to convince him that Iran is trying to kill him, and he'll do what we want.
I think this right here is a big part of how we got into that war. Trump did say, I got him before he got me, about the supreme leader. They convinced him that Iran was after his life. That's how they fucked him into this war.
And, of course, that fear of assassination, as you point out, is well-founded. He was nearly killed in Butler, Pennsylvania in July of 2024, and then 2 months later.
And that assassination, the plan was for the bullet to go through his head, but he turned his head. And, the plan was for him to die and then it to be blamed on Iran, and Nikki Haley would have taken over the GOP and become president and waged war against Iran. That was the plan, but Trump moved his head, and what we're having is the fallback plan, where Trump gets convinced that Butler was actually Iran, and we get to attack Iran anyway.
There was another potential assassin arrested who was hiding in the shrubbery outside of Mar.
I'm incredibly suspicious, to be honest, only because if he was controlled opposition, we're fucked. You mean Trump? No, Trump isn't controlled opposition. They hate him. The deep state hate him. They really wanted to kill him in Butler. You look at the video of that assassination attempt. Trump turns his head right as the shot rings out to look at a chart on immigration. If he hadn't done that, the bullet would have gone through his head.
Mar-a-Lago and West Palm Beach. So Trump was already primed for this since there had been two close calls. You write, the FBI manufactured a series of assassination plot, successfully convincing Trump that Iran was hunting him on U.S. soil with highly sophisticated teams of hitmen. Can you give us the details and I guess begin by talking about Asif?
Yeah, the deep state can make up any type of justification and story it wants. It's been doing it for years. Of course, there's going to be a cover story about the Butler assassination attempt, like who's behind it, yeah, of course, a way to blame it on Iran. You don't waste something like this.
Merchant.
Yeah.
Marchand.
Yeah, and so anyone who watched your intro will hear you quote Donald Trump stating, "I got him before he got me," referring to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. It's not.
That's what I wanted to cover in this video. What is this one?
There was a viral post on X.
Let's go to the Tucker Carlson bit. So, the very 2-hour interview with Joe Kent, who just resigned from the Trump administration, protesting the war. And I'm not going to go into what we already know, which is that Iran wasn't an imminent threat. I'm going to want to go into the video is about Charlie Kirk.
Very loudly.
He was single-minded.
And he walked off and he went, I believe, into the Oval. So when one of President Trump's closest advisors, who is vocally advocating for us to not go to war with Iran and for us to rethink at least our relationship with the Israelis, and then he's suddenly publicly assassinated and we're not allowed.
You know, just now it hit me. It hit me. Yeah, Israel was involved with Charlie Kirk assassination because Trump was being railroaded into war with Iran, and Charlie Kirk is someone who could have enough influence to get Trump off that path. If Charlie Kirk had lived, he could have prevented this Iran war and saved the Trump administration, because this is going to finish Trump. Trump is finished from politically as a result of this war. He committed political suicide the moment he dropped that bomb on the Supreme Leader. And Charlie Kirk, yes, he would have stopped this. And yeah, so they had to kill him. Absolutely. Now I believe, yes. When you think about it in context of the Iran war, yes.
Allowed to ask any questions about that. It's a data point. It's a data point that we need to look into.
What do you mean when you say we're not allowed to ask any questions about that?
We've been told that this individual, Robinson, is a lone gunman, and maybe he is. But the investigation that I was a part of, the National Counterterrorism Center was a part of, we were stopped from continuing to investigate. And the FBI will say that they stopped that because they wanted to have turn everything over to the Utah state authorities. Everything's going to trial. It's very, very sensitive. But there was still a lot for us to look into that I can't really get into. But there was still linkage for us to investigate that we needed to run down. And I'm not making any conclusions. I'm not saying
I don't think you are.
Because of this happened. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying there's unanswered questions. We know the pressure because of the text messages that have been made public, that Charlie was under a lot of pressure from a lot of pro-Israel donors. And again, we know Charlie was advocating to President Trump against this war with Iran. And we knew at the end of the 12-day war, at the end of Midnight Hammer, that the Israelis were going to come back and ask us to go back to war again.
Yeah, everyone knew that.
So we have a lot of data.
All the commentators I watched were predicting that there'd be another war with Iran. Actually, they thought it'd be about last December. It took a little bit longer than they expected, but it happened.
Data points between Butler, the assassination attempts against President Trump, the breaches of his security, what happened to Charlie Kirk.
Can I just ask you to pause on the Charlie Kirk because it upsets me to hear what you're saying, to be reminded that he was murdered, but also to hear you confirm what was reported in the media several months ago, that your office had been blocked from investigating his murder. That does not make sense to me. I don't understand why you would ever turn down help in an investigation from a U.S. agency with a lot of experience in gathering intelligence on things. That's your job.
The FBI will say, and the DOJ will say, that because it's an ongoing case, it's a Utah state case, that back off, they've got it. They've got a smoking case.
Oh, yeah, Charlie Kirk would have been president if he'd lived. I'm certain of it. Yeah, absolutely.
They've got the fingerprints on the gun, and they've got the case.
But the FBI was involved in the case.
The FBI was involved. The FBI's basically said that they're deferring to Utah because it's now a state case.
But they've established a precedent for federal investigation of this crime.
Yeah, and the National Counterterrorism Center's mandate is to investigate any foreign ties, to see if there's potentially any foreign ties.
See, when Charlie Kirk died, I didn't see the point of killing him at that particular time. But now, with the Iran war timetable in mind, and how, this Iran war wouldn't have happened if Charlie Kirk had lived. Now it makes complete sense.
We don't find any foreign ties, we back off. What I'm saying, without getting into too much detail, is there was more for us to investigate.
You believe there was reason to investigate foreign ties to Charlie Kirk's murder, and were told by...
Probably by what they uncovered on Discord, is my guess.
By the FBI, DOJ?
FBI and DOJ, yeah.
No, you're not allowed to investigate that.
Stop. It's done. They basically cut off our access to be able to get into that information.
The deep state is still extensive and has huge amount of control still.
And look, I didn't even say necessarily that I believe there's 100% foreign ties. There were data points that we needed to investigate. I mean, I think anybody who's even, looked at any kind of police investigation, you get 100 leads, you run them down, and 99 don't mean anything. We still had a lot more leads to run down that pertained to some kind of a foreign nexus that we were stopped from investigating. And,
that just strikes me as inconceivable that could happen.
Yep. And, let's see, war. Apparently, Charlie Kirk, was strongly against the Iran war. Yeah, it makes, Now I'm much more open to Israel being behind it. Very open to that. Anyway, what else do I have? Oh, just this last video about war propaganda, how it works.
Why do you think so many TV news anchors, the mainstream media, are so comfortable right now sort of repeating the government lines in real time without any sort of checks on it whatsoever?
This is about how basically the U.S. propaganda machine works.
No one's really questioning how this war ends. What is the goal? What is the end game? The embedded sort of Pentagon media that is, now inside the Pentagon. I call it like access journalism, which just infuriates the hell out of me, because it's like the Fox Newses of the world, the MSNBCs, the NBCs, or whatever, that want to have interviews with high-profile members of the administration. And so the only way to really do that, of course, is to just kiss their ass and to not ask the tough questions, and so to have them on a regular basis.
Access journalism.
In that capacity. But no one's really asking the tough questions about how this thing ends. What is the timetable for getting out of this? What does the off-ramp look like? There's, to me, total media malpractice. What do you see?
I mean, it's there, because you worked there for so long. It's a lot of things. One is just shallowness. These are people who know that their jobs are a lot less significant than viewers imagine they are. They're just reading some script. Right. And so it's kind of exciting to be talking about something big and historically.
The person who writes the script is the one who really controls the narrative.
Important, like a war, and you have no sense what that actually looks like. No one's ever actually seen a war. Those who have are a little less anxious to talk like that, but most of these people haven't. Some of them are not super geniuses. A lot of them are pretty nice, but they just don't know what they're talking about. The other factor is they know it's the red line. That's the red line. Like you could get on TV, there's so much like pretending that the red line is about race. And like, if I got on TV and said, actually, black people commit an awful lot of crimes, that I'd be fired. It's like, not really, actually. Not really. Nobody really cares. If you get on TV and say something like, why are we supporting Ukraine in a war against Putin? Like, why should we be enemies with Putin?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They'll go after you for that.
Right.
Like, the war stuff's not a joke. That's what they really, really care about. And I just know that from extensive experience.
Exactly.
Then the question is, well, why is that the one thing they really care about? Why was Rupert Murdoch on the phone with Trump constantly for the past year begging him to start a war with Iran? Which he was. And why are his media outlets, the New York Post, the Wall Street Journal, and then most obviously Fox News, relentlessly pushing for this? And I mean pushing in a monochromatic way. Like there was one person whose name I don't want to mention because I don't want to hurt this person, who asked one question like, really, is this really a good idea? And that person's never addressed the topic again. They're very serious about this question. And the question is like, why is that? Why is this your red line? Killing people in faraway countries. I don't really know the answer. And I've spent a lot more time than most people.
The petrodollar and the U.S. financial system all depend on all these wars and maintaining U.S. hegemony over the world. If we let Iran and China and Russia sell oil not in U.S. dollars, and other countries join them, and U.S. stops being reserve currency, the U.S. financial system collapses completely. We can't borrow to fund our deficits anymore. Complete collapse of standard of living in the United States. It's terrible. And basically, U.S. dollar and the U.S. financial system is basically a Ponzi scheme that depends on our continued global hegemony. If that's gone, it'll be a rough time.
People pondering this. I know a lot of people involved, or most of them, and I still don't really get it. And I feel like there's a spiritual element to this. Like, killing other people makes you feel godlike. I do think that. I mean, watch Lindsey Graham, and
that might be true for some people, but no. There's an economic basis to this desire for war, to maintain the dollar's hegemony over the world. Anyway, I think that's all I wanted to cover for today in terms of Iran. This will be on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Come watch on Kick or Twitch. And I'll see you in the next video.